Regular as clockwork, once every 76 years, a comet sweeps through the inner solar system.
All right, jokes aside, come on now. Let's move on. Carrie, you're getting weird. What'd you bring for us in the news today?
Okay, so I brought for all of you 3 articles that you gave me.
Right, yeah.
So the first one, inflation has been taking an insidious new form, according to Yahoo News, called shrinkflation, i.e. the size of many consumer goods have decreased. Bags of chips hold fewer chips, paper towel rolls contain fewer sheets, soft drinks are slightly smaller. These are techniques used by corporations to disguise increases in costs rather than increasing price, due to supply chain issues caused by COVID, and more recently by Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent sanctions placed on Russia, which has in turn upended the global oil market, which finally makes shipping more difficult.
You know, I have noticed this okay, that's not fair. My wife has noticed this for quite some time, and I have been made aware of it by her. So we've actually had quite a few conversations about this, and I thought it was interesting coming into the news. And I think the headline I sent you was something like, they've like proven that a pack of Doritos was like 5 Doritos less than the initial pack.
It is fewer chips on average.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this really raises the question of what is people's problem with this? Mm-hmm. This was going to happen, and it could happen one of 2 ways. Well, one of 3 ways. It could happen by raising the price of the container that you already used to. Or it could happen by keeping the price and making the container smaller than you were used to, or by a combination of the 2. One of those 3 things had to happen.
Sure.
Now, if we're talking about like, hey, the money's going somewhere and blah, 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 and all that stuff, sure, that gets into the weeds. That's a whole different conversation. So I think what we're talking about here is the ethicalness. Do
you want to pay more companies, or do you want to get less?
Right. And also the ethicalness of these companies in making it clear to people. But when it's happening to companies across the board, how should they deal with this? Or how do you feel about this? Let's go from the heartfelt.
So I feel like on this and just kind of the whole inflation issue, I'm coming at it from kind of a different perspective, because here's my thinking, right? This inflation, we all know it's because of COVID, basically. It's because of supply chains. It's because 1 million people died in the US, nearly. Yes. I mean, we're nearing 1 million.
Absolutely, yes.
A lot of them were like in transportation. You know, it's big problems which are not like the company's fault. It's kind of,
you know, I blame COVID so much at this point that I don't blame Biden, and I don't even really blame Trump for the situation that we're currently.
Yeah, I mean,
I blame him for Ukraine, but you know, I don't blame him for the Doritos. So,
I think Trump mismanaged the pandemic, but you know what? So did a lot of other leaders.
Right, exactly.
This is a big thing. It's a worldwide thing. My issue with what the corporations are doing is that despite these are hard times, right? But corporations are still enjoying record profits because they aren't taking the hit. They're passing the hit on to us, which of course they are. I feel like that is the exact situation in which the government steps in and says, corporations, you need to have less profits. You need to tighten the belt a little and keep the number of Doritos the same. You know, I think we're crying out for a law here that is just addressing inflation or prices or something so that it's not all on the consumer, which it is right now.
I get you. And I agree with that on a heartfelt level. I do. Sure. I do agree with that. And I'm, of course, that's why we're always wowed when we hear of a company that actually did it. You know,
right.
When we hear of a company that actually took a hit to support their workers or their customers, we're all like, oh my gosh, you know, this is unheard of. But it is going into the weeds a bit. The economy, our government in general, a lot of people don't seem to wrap their brains around this. They're just, oh, it's Biden's fault. Kill Biden, you know, impeach Biden. Now there's signs all over, impeach Biden. Well, impeach him for what? I mean, granted, he's not doing great, but I don't think he actually like did something, did he? But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't.
Well, so here's the thing about that is that there was a poll recently, I forget when, most Americans don't know that the inflation that they're experiencing, that they know is happening, because the inflation, the high gas prices, these are undeniable. They don't know that these are caused by COVID and supply chain issues. What they think is that they are caused by higher government spending. This is the prevailing narrative again among people who are basically uninformed or misinformed.
How could anybody
dumb,
think
Chauncey.
that? The country shut down for 2 years. At this point, we're just shy of losing 1 million people. So we shoved a bunch of money into, and I'm not talking about the ethics of any of this. I'm just talking about the logistics of it. We shut down for 2 years. We funneled money into taking care of these things, into solving these problems. And now you think heavy spending is going on? No, heavy spending was going on when Trump was in office, but I don't blame him. Again, a lot of the advice that he was taking would have spent more.
Yeah,
we're telling him to spend more, and maybe they should have. Again, I'm just talking about the logistics of it. How could somebody possibly think that Joe Biden's Build Back Better that hasn't even happened?
Because they don't follow the news. They hear he's a Democrat. They assume he's a tax and spend liberal because they've heard apocalyptic rhetoric about that. And they're like, there's inflation. Everyone knows inflation is caused by more spending. So they assume that he's spending more. Is you're looking for logic in a thought process that takes 0.25 seconds to get through. These people aren't thinking.
That's the deal. Now, this is going to come as a shock to a lot of people, but I find all this stuff really interesting in a passing thing. I watch the news every night. I chit chat with my wife, and I chit chat with you. That's about the extent of my news knowledge.
Sure.
A lot of it is skimming headlines, just like every other American on this planet.
Yeah, we all do that.
And I'm able to decipher the headline a little bit, even, and go like, oh yeah, I'm not falling for that. It's like, come on, man. Now, my wife tells me that so we were talking about the curve earlier in life where you start out all great.
Yeah.
And I've been wallowing in this thing. My wife tells me I'm actually a lot smarter than I give myself credit for, and that the world is actually a lot more stupid. But I personally feel like what one man can do, another man can do. And if I can come to these conclusions, especially while I probably hit my vape pen too often and don't get enough sleep and I'm totally out of shape, overworked, and don't read anything about it, why can't these people? It's insane.
Well,
I don't even know who I'm talking about. I am talking about every topic ever.
Well, I think a lot of the people who are assuming that this is because government spending are, you've got two categories here. And you've got basically conservatives, right, who are probably like intelligent people who are able to parse the news when it isn't something that like really hits their bias. But, I think someone says Trump caused this inflation, suddenly they become Sherlock Holmes, right? They are investigating every little nook and cranny of the article. They're applying maximum skepticism. They're applying maximum brain power. Someone says Biden caused the inflation. I think they probably are like, yeah, that checks out, which we do on the left too. And then on the other hand, you've got people who just don't follow the news or politics at all. And I don't know, a lot of those people are really young, frankly. Like, we're talking mostly about like 19-year-olds.
But I don't follow Grey's Anatomy at all, and I can tell you I do not have deep opinions about what's going on that show because I don't care, which is why I don't follow it.
I'm talking about non-voters here, I'm talking about people who are just disengaged, which there is a lot of American adults.
I like how our show has switched from paranormal to me just being shocked by people. I feel like this is our whole new premise. Instead of paranormal, we'll just talk about how we're shocked by the normality of things.
The real Radio Wasteland was just just the suburbs.
Yeah, and because I don't think we have any. We have all weird news this week.